May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all our hearts and minds be ever acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil, and he fasted 40 days and 40 nights. Well, that's rough. A time where he is alone. A time where he is separated from those he cares about. A time where he is tried by the devil. While I was reading up on this gospel reading, I came across an idea that I liked. It says that our identity is challenged most significantly when life is hard. Our text states that Jesus is famished when he is tempted by the devil. We may find ourselves faced with temptation when we are stressed, overtired, anxious, or sick. Now, the first way that the devil tries to tempt Jesus is by suggesting that he command a stone to become bread at a time when Jesus has been without food. As creatures, we humans have some very basic needs for food, water, shelter, and love. When we lack these, it becomes very difficult to think of anything beyond meeting them. And yet Jesus is able to reason with the devil and resist the temptation. There is also a temptation related to affirming our identity within society. The temptation to acquire power, to solve all the problems of the world. The temptation to assert who we are. And we can hear it in the very words of the devil when he says, "If you are the Son of God." Those words, if. And when I read through history and look at the stories of different revolutionary figures, I find something very compelling about the power vacuums that exist within their societies or communities. Often these people started out trying to fix some problem within their society, but in order to do so, they had to acquire power, which brought them into competition with other people or institutions. And the solution for solving these can involve fighting for more power, which brings further complications. One thing that seems very clear in most of the gospel stories is that Jesus was concerned about the problems in his society. So that second offer from the devil to give Jesus the authority over all the kingdoms of the world would have sounded like a very tempting solution to all the troubles that Jesus was so worried about. And yet Jesus refused the offer. He resisted that temptation. And there is the temptation of hubris, the misunderstanding of who we are. And again, we hear it in those words, "If you are the Son of God." Hubris is believing that we are capable of more than we actually are, or excessively trusting that God will rescue us regardless of the risk we take. Then Matt was led by Bishop Susan out into the wilderness of Dunnville and Waynfleet. But dear Lord, please don't let there be temptations from the devil. I've got to say, this is an interesting passage to preach on for my final Sunday here at St. George. I seem to remember one of Scott's final sermons began with that line, "You brood of vipers." So I guess there is something of a tradition here of going out with a bang. I also once heard a story of another priest who had experienced a very rough week, a series of great difficulties, and he had to preach on this passage, and Saturday night ended up being a very long and eventful evening. Feeling in a rather rough condition, he started his sermon by saying, "And today's sermon's theme will be temptation, something I've had a bit of experience with lately because we are all human. Looking out at his congregation, that preacher noticed two of his companions from the night before looking as energetic as ever. And he responded, "That is, most of us are human. And then there are those who are created by the devil, and they are sitting here laughing at me as a reminder of my own frailty." That's all today. That's all that preacher had the energy for. Well, my sermons might be on the shorter side, but I don't think I've ever preached one that short. Humor aside, that story does illustrate some important lessons for both preachers and all of us. Those temptations that we face and the consequences of those temptations are not only faced in the isolation of the wilderness that Jesus experienced in the gospel today. That temptation can be faced by a small group of people or a large community. And the consequences of those temptations can be seen when one is standing before a community. That gift, although that sounds stressful, it is a gift. And the gift is twofold. Accountability on the one hand, and on the other hand, it is our capacity to show grace to one another. There might be a third gift, fodder for humor and jokes as we look back at different parts of our lives. At its heart, though, this theme of temptation is a good one for Lent, a season where we are meant to reflect on our relationship with God, what separates us from God, and what brings us closer to God. Jesus' resistance is a testament to the closeness of his relationship with God. His resistance both brings him closer to God, and it is also because he is already close to God. It's kind of like a really good friendship, or a marriage, or a business partnership where you can endure strains within the relationship because of how close you are and the trust you have already established. But enduring that difficulty together can also strengthen the relationship by establishing more examples of the bond of trust between each other. Well, the past couple of years may have been a time of great isolation and wilderness, with the struggles connected with COVID. Life has gone on, and it has shown many people the importance of human contact and positive relationships. And although COVID may have created something of a wilderness for all of us, one thing that has not been a wilderness for me personally has been my time here at St. George's. COVID shut things down back in March of 2020, and I graduated from seminary in that May with no idea of where I was going to end up, or even if there would be a job or ordination at the end of it. By July, I was talking with Martha about coming here on a volunteer basis, and I arrived in September of 2020. A year later, I was ordained as a deacon, and then the following year of 2022, ordained a priest. A large part of that would not have been possible without the support of this community. Throughout a time that has challenged the world, you have always shown yourselves as a church community that exemplifies Christian love and charity. A church that has found a variety of ways to remain together during an extended period of great difficulty. A church that has been able to support and mentor not only one but two curates. A church that did not close the doors to feeding the hungry when many restrictions were placed on how we could gather and serve food to one another. A church that maintained many, many programs and points of fellowship and relationship. Many great programs, such as an exceptional music program, a STEP Youth Resource Center, the breakfast program that has gone on for 30 years, and many others that I cannot name at this time that go beyond memory. I trust and hope that in the future, when I hear of this community of St. George's, I will hear of more endeavors and more examples of the way you care for one another. And though I am sad that I will not be as involved with you, I am excited to see how things will continue to grow and change for you over the next couple of years. I am deeply grateful for everything you have enabled me to learn and all the ways that you help and support each other. I hope that in the future, this is who you will continue to be. Godspeed and God bless.